Hey, welcome to my first YouTube video demonstration of a product. I watch these all the time. I figure I would contribute to the internet knowledge of things. Just got a new interesting piece of equipment, a new fermenter, with the intent of replacing my old plastic fermenters that I've had for about 3 years, and they've worked really good. You know, the better bottle plastic carboys work really well. You know, there's obvious advantages and disadvantages to using plastic carboys. There's my brew dog coming in to hang out. Don't want glass because of the danger, obviously, and can't afford conicals or stainless steel. So what I opted to do was check out these. So that's the Big Mouth Bubbler, and this is the 6.5 gallon ported, or siphonless they call it, and it's called siphonless namely because they now have this faucet, port, whatever you want to call it, that allows you to drain the fermenter when you're done with your primary or secondary fermentation. And you don't have to use a racking cane or a racking cane or a siphon starter or any of that anymore. I was doing a kind of a thing where I would push, using CO2, I would push CO2 in to create the siphon. It's always kind of a pain in the butt. So obviously, you know, those of you that are familiar with using bottling buckets or the standard, your first fermentation buckets usually start with, they have this type of a port here. So did a little research. These are available online. It seems to be just from Northern Brewer and Midwest Supplies. I assume they have some type of an arrangement with them because I don't find that you can get these from anywhere else. So I made the plunge. I actually bought 2 of these, and a couple of things that I read or actually saw online about these, that earlier I guess there were some issues with how the top piece, the lid, went on. The original ones actually had a screw on. You can actually see they still have the threads, but they had screw-on tops with just a basic a plastic piece that went on top that was supposed to seal it, but apparently that caused issues. It really never sealed very well. So then they came out with this updated version, which, as you can see, has some silicone rings on it. And I guess the deal is you just kind of push it down like that. You insert your blow-off tube or your your bubbler up there, your airlock, with whatever size, I don't know what size plug you'd use there or bung you'd use there, but yeah, so do that. I have seen some feedback that seems to be that once fermentation is going, that this lid tends to push up, and I can see that would be an issue because obviously the silicone rings are making contact with the inside of the plastic here, but really there's nothing to kind of hold them in place. It's not like there's any ribbings on the inside for them to kind of get a grip on. So these could easily just kind of, well, it's a little hard right now, so they should stay on. And I've seen mixed reviews, that some say they do and some say they don't. So I'm going to see how it works. Obviously my thoughts are, whenever I look at stuff like this, I always immediately start thinking of ways to improve them. I'm not an engineer or anything, but I like to think of things like that. And I suppose they could put a plastic ring around here with some type of almost like a Grolsch lock, or something that you would just kind of hold down and would kind of hold it in place. But maybe that's something they're working on now. So anyway, today is my first day using it. You can see it's kind of wet on the inside because I've rinsed it out for the first use. I'm going to hit it with some sanitizer right in the middle of the boil of a tropical stout right now, so that's what's going in there for the inaugural run. So yeah, so we're going to see how that works. And in addition to buying these two things, I also got this. Oop, get my finger out of the way. That. So this is what's called the depth charge, and essentially what it is, it's just a stainless steel mesh, or can, or whatever you want to call it, that they've rigged up to a special version of their lid, that it just kind of goes on there. And then on the top, instead of having the smaller bung, it's got a larger bung, and then they've got this silicone cap that I guess is supposed to kind of hold everything in, and there's a port here where you can put in your airlock. And then this stainless steel thing that's in there now, they call it an agitator. So I guess the thought process is when you're using the fermenter and you want to do some dry hopping, or you want to add some oak chips, or anything that you want to kind of add flavor to the beer, so you drop it in there, and then you kind of use this guy here to just kind of gently push things down. I don't know how much oxygen that would kind of add to the beer, but I suppose if you're doing it while there's still active fermentation going on, the yeast are going to eat that oxygen up, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. You probably just don't want to go nuts with it, you know, and do something like that. Just use it to gently kind of push things down. So yeah, so I'm going to actually use this predominantly when I do a New England IPA coming up in a couple of weeks, once this stout is done. But the interesting thing is that because this, I'm going to kind of take this off, because all this does is just, hang on a second, this thing just comes off, as you can see. So you've probably seen these before. I mean, you could use this as a, you know, as a hop spider, you know, in your brew thing, in your brew kettle. Brew thing, it's a very technical term. The other thing you could do, I don't remember if I read it on their site or not, but it's an interesting concept, is when you're actually, you know, transferring your wort into the fermenter, you could actually have this thing on there, and I'm going to actually try this out today, and just, you know, the output from your boil kettle and your chiller right into this screen. So essentially what you're going to do is any of the trub that's coming in, a lot of that stuff is going to get filtered out. So really what's going into your fermenter is just really clean wort. So if you have issues with, you know, a lot of trub getting into your fermenter, you know, taking up a lot of space, especially if you do a super hoppy beer and you're not using a hop spider or some other way to control the hops, or you get a lot of that protein kind of gunk that gets in there, especially like me when I do my chiller, I'm using a plate chiller that goes directly into my fermenter, so I'm not recirculating. So a lot of that protein kind of forms as it chills and it gets into the beer, so I'm figuring, well, this will kind of help take some of that stuff out. I mean, there should be enough in there for the yeast to be happy, but most of it's going to come out. So you kind of get two uses out of this thing. You get the ability to do your dry hopping, or, you know, flavoring during the primary and secondary fermentation, and it also can serve as a hop spider, or it can serve as a kind of a filter when you're transferring your wort from your boil kettle into the fermenter. So it was a little pricey. I normally don't buy stuff like that. I usually make a lot of my stuff. I'm pretty much DIY, but I figured, what the heck, you know, it was purpose built for this setup, and it might be something that works well. So I will post another video later on, you know, with results of, you know, how this worked out on my brew day, and then how the big mouth bubbler worked during the fermentation, and, you know, how the port works. You know, I would assume that as long as the trub at the bottom is lower when it settles out than the level of the outlet is, that I should be able to pull some pretty clear beer into my keg, you know, without having to, you know, deal with what I normally have to deal with. So anyway, that's my new adventure. Thanks for watching, and let you know how it turns out. Cheers.